Hi, I'm Eric Pena, and I want to talk about Trumpet Etude number 1 with you. So right from the beginning, we have a long first phrase. What we're going to do is try to get from the beginning to measure 30 all in one breath. In order to do that without too much struggle, I recommend you pull your shoulders back. What that does is help expand your lungs and let you take a little bit more air in, which is going to make this feel a lot easier. All right, so shoulders back, full breath, and when we start, we have some double tongue arpeggios. The important thing here is do not rush through the arpeggios. Make sure that every note sounds as clean as a note before and after it. You can hear while I'm double tonguing those arpeggios, every note is as audible as the notes before and after it. That's what you're looking for. All right, we get to the second line, measure 8, and you're going to see some articulation styles written in for us. Measure 8, measure 15, measure 16. We have a mix of legato and staccato. We need to make sure that we're playing that exactly as written on the page. Moving on to the third line, we're going to have a key change that also drops down to the dynamic of mezzo forte, and everything is extremely legato here. So the sections before were a little bit more separated. Now we're getting to connected. So make sure that there's a big difference to be heard from going from one style to the next. After that, we have a quarter rest, and that's where we can take our next large breath, and we are done with the first phrase of the etude. All right, we're at the middle section of the etude now. Starting at measure 30, we have a quarter rest. So take a full breath. Remember to keep your shoulders pulled back so that you get that little bit of extra air. We start with some 16th notes double tongued. And then between every one of these groups of phrases, like every two measures, we have an eighth rest. What I recommend doing is keeping the mouthpiece on your embouchure, but taking in small amounts of air through your nose in between each of these groups. That way, you're keeping your lung capacity at full rather than it depleting as you're going across, because we're trying to make it to measure 52 before we take our next big breath. Also, by not taking the mouthpiece off of your face, it's gonna increase your chances of hitting the next note. If you try to take in air through your mouth in between these short eighth rest breaks, there's a higher chance that you're gonna miss the next note. So keep the mouthpiece placed and just take in a quick, half second or a quarter second air intake through your nose, and then continue on. It might be a little awkward at first, but I think if you practice this, you're going to get through this with very good efficiency, and you're going to be able to play well to measure 52 without any struggle. So by taking in small amounts of breaths during those eighth rests, but doing it through my nose, you can hear that all of my entrances for the next starting note was already set because I didn't move anything with my mouth. And by the time I got to the stake cut, I still had full lung capacity. I feels like I hadn't used any air because I'm playing two measures and then quickly refilling it with a quick breath. So that's going to help you a lot getting through that whole middle section of the etude. One other thing you might have noticed is in the recording, when I recorded this etude the first time, I played the style a little differently. I played the high notes staccato, all of them staccato. And after speaking with Joe Baca, he mentioned that another variation would be playing these notes legato and then staccato at the end. So that's up to interpretation. For me, initially, it felt more natural to play all the high notes, kind of light and separated. But I could see also where somebody might want to have variation of style there. So let me play that, and so you can hear the difference. So here is legato and then staccato. And here would be a way where everything at the top is light and separated. So play with whatever feels most natural to you, but however you're playing it, make sure that you're doing it with intent and that you're meaning to play it that way. All right, let's take a look at the all-state cut now. So we should still have a full lung capacity from the breaths that we were taking in the section before. When we get to the all-state cut, there's going to be a ritardando and a dynamic change. We're going to drop down to mezzo piano, and we're going to be playing some long, low notes. Use this time to replenish any kind of fatigue that you have. It's going to be setting you up for the high notes that are coming in a little bit. So use this to kind of get some energy back in your chops, kind of like a little warm down almost with these low notes. When we get to measure 51, there's going to be a slight crescendo, and you're going to single tongue all this. All right, now the tempo shouldn't be too fast to where you need to double tongue it. So try to get a fast single tongue and make sure that every note is coming out clear. Don't crescendo too loud because you still have to build up in the next part. So 51, we have straight 16th notes with a slight crescendo. We hold out a whole note at measure 52. This is where we take our last breath of the etude. Now, this whole note at 52, what I recommend is cutting it off a little earlier, maybe like at the end of 3, and give yourself time to take a very large breath, and you can maybe even delay the start of the next measure slightly, but give yourself a small break, because coming up after this breath is going to be high notes, it's going to be fast scales, it's going to be tricky articulation, and then you're going to end it on a high note. So you need to have everything mentally prepared and physically prepared to make it to the end of the etude. And if that takes giving yourself an extra half second of rest to get that accomplished, then just feel free to do it, and don't feel like you need to rush into it and let your fingers get ahead of where you are mentally. When we get to measure 53, make it an obvious style difference with your single tonguing. So before we had straight 16th notes, now emphasize and over exaggerate the make sure that it's very obvious that we're doing that while you're crescendoing up to the high A. That high A is the high point, right? That's like where you're almost at your max volume. Hold that out, go for the high B, and I would say the high C sharp also. If you're going into the all state cut, you're probably there to give it your all, give it your best. The low A, I think, or I mean not the low A, the high A, but it's a lower note below that C sharp, is probably a safety net. If you really feel like you're just not going to get that C sharp, go ahead and go for that A. But I think we're all looking for the challenge, and we're going to push out that C sharp. Going right into there, you're going to be fast scales. So don't be thinking that you're going to get to the high note and then that's where it stops. That's just the beginning, because the whole last line is nothing but 16th notes. So you're holding that high C sharp, and now now we have all these crazy scales and articulations to trip us up a little bit. When you're doing all this, again, try not to rush too fast. Keep everything a comfortable tempo. The important thing is getting all the right notes and making everything sound clear. So you can hear how the single tongue at the beginning was light and crisp with a small crescendo. Once I got to the pattern where it was a dotted 16th note, I made that a little more obvious, crescendoed even more up to the high A. When I got to the high C sharp, I held it out maybe just a little bit because I'm getting myself mentally prepared for the fast scale patterns that are coming up. Single tongue all the way down, then you have some slur, slur 2, tongue 2, and then it swaps to tongue 2, slur 2. So watch that swap right there on measure 57. And then when we get to the very last two measures, so we have an A and then you have an accelerando. The way I treat this is the first three notes are going to be the notes where I speed up. They're kind of like pickups. And then you're going to go into two groups of 16th notes. So think of it bum ba da 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 dum ba da 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 dum. So you have three pickups and then just straight 16th notes to the last note. Bum ba ba bum da 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 dum. Let me demonstrate that. So a good way to make sure that you're hitting every note is to subdivide it like that. Be thinking of the 16th notes in your head. Bum, 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 daga, 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 dum. That way you know that you're not skipping over anything. I'm going to demonstrate the last two lines for you and take note of the big breath that I take at 52 and then how I exaggerate the dotted 16th note pattern. The scales on the last line. And then when I get to the end, be listening for that 1, 2, 3, baga daga 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 dum. Those pickups, those slow pickups into the daga 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 dum. All right, that concludes this mini lesson for Etude number 1. Best of luck on your audition, and if you see me around TMEA, feel free to come up and say hello.